Hello, everyone. Welcome to our World Today, the Unionist perspective. We're happy to have you for our weekly discussion. Today we have a few topics to discuss, like 3 or 4, that we thought were of interest and that happened during the last week. And yeah, we're hoping to have you participate and tell us your feelings and thoughts on these topics. So the main topic that we're going to talk about is Google's lawsuit. They had a lawsuit over the actual privacy of the user's data when they were using the private navigator. Um, there is also like the Queen of Denmark abdicating. There's like we're going to talk a little bit about like the global work trends of 2023 and what that says about society. And then we're going to mention, if we have time, the earthquake that happened in Japan like 2 days ago. And that will be it. So hope you'll stay and you know, participate with us. So should we start with Google's lawsuit? No?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have anything you'd like to mention before we start, Steve?
No.
Okay, good. So Google's lawsuits. So basically, I think almost everybody knows that there's a private mode on Google, and it's supposed to be a mode where you don't get tracked, like your data is not used, everything is refreshed. It's basically like a secret mode or like an undercover mode on the internet. And there was a problem this year because users realized that even on private mode, they were getting like their data and cookies used for other things. And there was basically a lawsuit where Google settled to paying really like strong, I guess, amend. Like, is that how you say this? Basically, like yeah, they had to pay like $5 billion, and that was a lawsuit that settled like a few days ago, in order to get reparation, like have reparation for what they did. And I wanted to see like how you felt about this. Like, um, I have my own personal thoughts about this, but you know, I wanted to know like what does this highlight to you, basically?
Um, so I guess so tentatively, well, actually no, not tentatively for sure. I mean, I guess this is like an issue with honesty because, Google was saying that if you use the what is it called? Incognito mode or whatever, then your data wouldn't be tracked. Like that was the idea, that you would be completely incognito using it. So the fact that you weren't given that actually from using that mode was dishonest,
Yeah.
and it's a good thing, and it's a natural thing that people are like in the relationship between Google and their like customers, I guess. They're just rooting out things that they don't approve of and that isn't loving, and I feel like it's very like normal. And tech companies and the services they provide are still kind of like they're still exploring what are the right regulations here, and they're still exploring what are the boundaries here. And so people are just getting clear on that, and I feel like it's very normal, and everything. And yeah, I guess it's interesting to me that there was a $5 billion like settlement, or they were paying $5 billion in damages to people. Because I was like thinking, wow, like that's a lot of money for them to be paying, you know. I mean, I figured it would almost be enough for them to just kind of like stop doing that, like stop collecting people's data when they shouldn't be. But I don't know. Do you guys know what I mean? Because I'm like, because part of this, of course, this could be a very naive, uninformed reaction, right? But part of my reaction to that was I was like, why are they paying money? Like all they did was, well, they stole people's data, but and profited from it. So I guess they're returning, in a sense, they're returning the ill-gotten gains of using
Yeah.
stolen data, right? What do you guys feel about that? Yeah.
I was feeling that like I'm glad there's this boundary there, and it feels like um you know people are taking back their power there. Um but it almost feels like just paying isn't really like what people were asking for, you know? So, yeah, that's just what I was thinking for that.
Yeah. I have a complicated view on that because having done like digital marketing and communication studies, um, we basically know that even when we're on private mode, like you're not really private. Like people could track your data, and that's why a lot of people are turning to VPNs
Mhm.
to in order to like actually protect their data and all. Um, but like so that was my first reaction when I saw like this lawsuit. I was like, well, you know, your traces are not really covered anyway. So, but then I saw and understood that there was the actual use of data. Like you shouldn't have targeted ads and campaigns when you're in private mode. That isn't normal because this is supposed to be a completely neutral base. Like even if people knew what you were doing on the internet, this is not the place where your data is supposed to be used. And so that's not okay. Um, the fact that the deal is settled, um, I think probably it could be like it could work as a jurisdiction, hopefully, for Google to not do that again, to the risk of being put into a lawsuit again and having to pay again. But obviously, like since it's a settlement, we're not sure what is going to happen. And 5 billion is like a lot, and at the same time, not a lot when you compare it to like the money that they make in data collecting. So yeah, it's I have a bittersweet feeling about this. I have I'm not sure. I'm glad that it was actually recognized that the use of data shouldn't be something that is traced like that, and that there was actually a quick action to it. Um, but obviously, like settlement deals are, I don't know, they're just like complicated, you know. It's it avoids like a long battle in court and loss of money in years, obviously. But it doesn't help in like putting the actions and the decision of a judge into law per se, even if like it may have a really good like it may be a bit really good boundary to not start again. So yeah, who knows? Like I'm more curious about like what it says about, yeah, I guess I'm more curious about what it says about our boundaries, that our data is being used like that. And there is really no boundaries, and that Google is like working more and more to have a monopoly of everything. And that it doesn't really have respect for the user. And I guess there's a lot to it that is similar to what we discussed last week, even though it's on a digital scale. There is like a lack of respect for human life in that sense, in the sense of like now like privacy and rights. So yeah, that's more my feeling. I think like first that's a pain point that we probably should look at.
Yeah, it is. And I feel like um there are different feelings that people have about like internet privacy. Like some right, like you hear some views from people where they're like, oh, I'm quite suspicious of like internet companies and everything, and I do everything I can to protect myself. Or sometimes people don't, but they still express extreme what's the word, like almost paranoia about it, right? And then there's a lot of the attitude in consciousness feels like very like, well, yes, like they have all my data, but like what does it matter? Like, I'm just searching for like recipes online and like reading articles and like yeah, I'm making purchases. Who cares? Like everything's encrypted if I'm making a payment. I feel like a lot of people are kind of like, oh, who cares? And then some people are more like, oh, I am actually concerned about this. But I feel like that you don't really see the consequences of this in your life, except when you see like targeted ads and stuff like that, or like, but I feel like it sits more in the realm for most people of like, oh, this could be a problem. Like this could be a problem. I'm not exactly sure how, but like it could be. And I think Google kind of knows that, and it feels like they really exploit that. And anything in tech, like because it's probably in most cases less regulated than other things, tech companies are like, well, great, we can go and do this thing that we want to do, and we'll see it later whether or not it's truly right or wrong. And to some extent it's normal and fine because it's like you're getting to know the boundaries, but I don't know, to some extent it's kind of just it's an ethical kind of gray zone. I don't know, that's what I feel about it. So yeah, I don't know. But I feel like it's an obvious thing. Like if you have a private browsing mode, it should be private. But maybe they're like, oh well, we're gonna say we have it because it would feel really bad if we didn't have it, right? If we didn't have it and maybe some competitors did, that would look really bad. But we're not willing to forego that money making aspect of tracking your data or whatever. So that definitely doesn't look good. Sorry, no.
I've definitely been more on the side of like, who cares, whatever. Probably all my stuff's out there. But that doesn't really feel good. Like when I do feel into the core of it, it feels like no, it's the right thing is to have that privacy and is to be respected in that way and to have that boundary. So that's just what feels right.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, like, yeah, there is a lot of lack of boundaries and respect of boundaries. Here we probably like are going to make enormous progress in terms of that, in the upcoming years because, like, for example, like European laws are so much more are so much stricter in terms of privacy and use of data than entire website platforms and social media have to make amendments just to be able to be used in Europe, like for example Threads, that literally just became something in Europe and most of the world, and like in a week ago, even though it was like available several months ago for other countries. And I guess there is also something where in a world where money is going to dominate the intention of people and companies, we will continue to have to have really great boundaries with these people. And I guess that's just a fact. It's not sad or anything. I think we're used to that, like the discussion around data and everything, especially this year, like this past year and a half, with the hearing of like Facebook CEO and TikTok CEO and things like that. We just have to be prepared to just like put boundaries and work step by step so that it gets better and better, because that's the only thing that we can do at this time. And then hopefully, like, the more like we purify consciousness, the more the intention would shift between a money-making interest and a service, you know, a service, I guess, intention like based on service to people, which is actually what life purpose and services should be about. So yeah.
Yeah. I felt the same way. Like on our end, there's the choice to respect ourselves and maintain boundaries and stuff and care about this and not just be apathetic. And on their end, on Google and the tech companies' end, it's about a shift from being like, what can I get from people, to what can I give to people? Like actually looking for new ways to provide value instead of looking for new ways to push people's boundaries and extract value because they can, just because they see an opportunity, like that's the opposite of what you want, and then you become more and more irrelevant and disliked, and yeah, it's not good that way. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. So I guess moving on, I think in terms of talking about like interests of leaders economically or politically, I think this is a good transition towards the next topic, which is the Queen of Denmark's abdication. I thought this was interesting that she made a speech to the nation and announced her abdication on national TV in Denmark. And people were pretty surprised about that. But I don't know, like, obviously, like before this, I guess before in history, you couldn't really abdicate, but that wasn't what you did. Like, that was the exception. And now, like, we have the King of Spain, I think, stepped down and his son took his place. We have her, we have the Pope, like, for example. I think it was Benedict XVI, the 16th. I found this really interesting, actually. I think just like what we said last year about like the Prime Minister in New Zealand, I think people are pretty much more conscious about if they're fit in democracies, at least, if they're fit to govern countries instead of like holding on to power until death. And I like that because she's 83-year-old and she basically trusts her son, who is like 55, to just rule the country, and you know, have a good relationship with the different governments. And she also she thanked the citizens, she thanked the different governments that were under her rule. And I think this is the contrary of what we just talked about. I think there is a deep respect for the crown and a deep respect for the country that she may be showing. And I know a few people are sad that she's abdicating, but I don't know, I feel I have positive vibes from it. So how do you guys feel about that? I'm curious.
To me, it feels like gentler and more compassionate for everybody involved, basically, because so instead of with Queen Elizabeth II's with her death, so what happened was people had to process her death and the transition of power between her and King Charles III, right? They had to process those at the same time. And so did Charles. He had to process her death and him becoming king all at the same time. And it feels a little bit it's just more emotionally taxing and hard to handle, and expensive. And this is very compassionate and gentle because now you're getting used to, Frederick being the king instead of Margaret being the queen. And you're not dealing with her death at the same time. And there's also not that element of let's say insensitivity or whatever, being what am I trying to say? I feel like with royalty, at least how I've heard it talked about in the US, everyone sees it as everyone in royal family is just hungry for power and money, which may or may not be true, but that's a stereotype. And that people are just waiting for their elders to die so that they can move up in succession and become the monarch, right? And that's not necessarily true in this case or at all, but it's just a stereotype. And Americans, in my experience, growing up, people would talk badly about royalty in that way. So it kind of reduces that too, because it's a gracefully passing the power, whatever exists in Denmark with the royalty, instead of it being oh, she finally died. And I'm not saying that that's the case at all. And yeah, full respect to Denmark and the royal family, but it's a stereotype in countries like the US, right? So I don't know. Maybe that's part of it too. They just don't want any part in that kind of vibe, and I could see why they would do that. I don't know.
This is kind of a side note, but isn't Denmark considered one of the happiest places in the world to live? Is that right?
When those surveys, yeah, when people do
Yeah,
this, yeah,
it's like Denmark and Finland, I think. But
yeah,
anyway, just wanted to point that out too.
for quality of life and stuff.
Sorry, I didn't get it. They're known for the quality of life. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's that yeah, Denmark's considered one of the happiest places to live.
Yeah, it's Scandinavian countries are pretty high up there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I mean, from what I've read, also, I think the crown of Denmark is way it's less strict, I would say, than the crown of England, United Kingdom. And also maybe it's more prone to progressive things and change. For example, a few years ago, they streamed down the number of royals. So if you weren't for the direct line, like you weren't considered a royal per se, still had a title, but you weren't considered like someone that would inherit the crown. So yeah, it's you know, I have a feeling that if it was in the British context of things, like people would have been way more opposed. Like it would have been more difficult to do that stuff. I think probably like there's something about the way they govern and the way they think about the monarchy that is a little bit looser. And even if I think you can like it or you can hate it. But I think it allows for more room into a relationship in a sense. It's not that to say that it's better than anywhere else, but there is something that seems to work there about the way it can accept change, even while upholding traditions to a country. And so I found this interesting. It's just what I wanted to say. So yeah. And I don't know, I'm not sure like how much it has to do with um the fact that there is seemingly like a better way of living in northern countries. I don't know if it's linked, but they are sure praised for the way that they handle things. So maybe there's something to really like understand about them. But at the same time, like cultures, history, price of living, like all of these things are really different. So I wonder how much we can take from another culture, um, and for that to work in our own countries because of like the different like the difference in culture, basically. Just something that I'm curious about. Yeah.
Yeah, I felt the last thing too that is coming up for me about it, or what I feel now is, um, I think that in a lot of countries that have constitutional monarchies, like there's a question of, well, do we really need the royal family? Everything, like the relevance of the royal family is in question more by people, just something that they talk about. And I think it's interesting. I feel like this definitely, I feel like the decision of Queen Margareta to abdicate is kind of like, it's that means that she's not too anxious, I feel, about that, like the legitimacy of the royal family, because I feel like being very traditional, like wanting to like um stay like in power, like literally until the end of until the end of your life. I think that more traditionalist way of doing things, it it would be more for someone who is more anxious about the relevance of the monarchy versus someone who's willing to like kind of break tradition and maybe do something that they feel good about, more compassionate. It's more like it's a move that shows you're not too anxious about that, like maintaining legitimacy, traditional legitimacy of the monarchy. But yeah, I don't know. And it does bring up questions because people are like, well, what do they do? Like they have all of this wealth for what reason? I feel a lot of the time it's just people's upsets about wealth, and people incarnate into they're born into these positions because they make certain choices or have a certain vibration. So we all know that it's not exactly unfair, but yeah, I guess people are just like getting clear about like the value exchange, like for all the value and support given to a monarch, what value do they give to the country? But I think a lot of people in the countries with monarchies do feel value there because they're like, oh, they're the sovereign, like they represent our country. There's a like a good feeling, a positive feeling, or they do perform some like functions, like diplomatic functions, or I don't know, ceremonial or other things like that. So I don't know. What do you guys feel about it? Especially
Well,
Irene, because
yeah.
Europe.
I feel like obviously I'm not well placed to talk because like France, Revolution, Republic, things like that, separation of church and state. But I uh I think there's something there. Mostly like people don't understand, but I think you can see it in the sadness of people when a monarch dies or like when he or she abdicates, like it is the case right now. And I think there's definitely like at least some stability that is brought to a kingdom by the representative of the monarch. And obviously they have a lot of like diplomat functions that we don't exactly know about, um, which are very important for relationships basically with people from other countries and for international relationships. So sometimes I think it can seem like very surface level, not really that profound and deep, and maybe people would like to go to a republic, but I think obviously like we know that countries, they're a reflection of the consciousness of the people. I think if they really wanted republic, and I'm not saying again that monarchy or republic, like there is a better way, they would have shifted to republic. So whereas it means that there's still a function that these people hold for the country that helps them. And I think over the years I really understood that. It's like, um, it was it was already like pretty obvious when I was like studying political science, and it's even more obvious now that we're doing this discussion, knowing that countries are just like complex individuals with like choices and spiritual patterns. There is a definite thing for me about the fact that if they wanted to have changed to a republic by now, they would have, obviously. Yeah.
And I feel like too, like it kind of fills a psychological need sometimes for a country in a way, or to explain, like in the UK, for example, like there was always the Queen, and people like, oh, the Queen, we like her, or some people didn't, but like, oh, she's been here since 1952, and she's stable, and whereas like, the democratic part of the government might be like turmoil and like people shouting and like fistfights in the parliament or whatever and like just the democracy can feel really like just turbulent and back and forth, and lots of like it can, especially in the US, like gosh, it's like insane, and we don't have a monarch. So we can't look to anyone and be like, ah, yes, the Queen of America, she's been with us since the 50s. We feel stability with her, No, there's none of that. So, yeah, that could be part of it, you know. So, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. I think people like there's something that is coming to mind. I think people are way more attached to how things are sometimes that they actually, you know, notice. And I think we can speak on back to the fact that people are coming back to Earth again and again. People are attached to living on Earth and to the way it is on Earth, like the countries that they've lived in, the cultures that they had, yada yada. So it's not a surprise that we also would be attached to like things that brought importance, or maybe we don't feel it, but this monarchy that seems like almost useless today, maybe like 300 years ago, it brought like peace and stability to the country. And that is still in the spiritual kind of DNA and generational like feelings of the consciousness of the country. And I found this so interesting that I'm not sure we can like fully understand something from a country we aren't from. It would be good to have like a lot of like people from the UK or Denmark like explaining this to us, but at least we can know that there is still like a pretty good reflection of their choice, and it's interesting to see these kinds of events and seeing the people's reaction to it. Like, there is this reluctant like acceptance of a monarchy, or like, oh yeah, whatever, like they're here. I don't really care. But if someone abdicates and they're like, what? I actually liked her. It's kind of funny. Yeah. All right. Yeah, Isaiah, did you have something to say about this?
No, I think you guys covered it. You guys just kind of said what I was thinking. So,
Nice. Well,
Mhm.
we're going to transition to something that you may have a lot of thoughts on. I followed you when I saw this article. This is like um I guess how can the work trends, the labor trend of 2023. And basically it's just like a summary of like the big things that we've seen in terms of like work trends, employer-employee relationships during the year. And I'm just going to summarize it a little bit. First of all, like ChatGPT was launched on November the 30th of 2022. So pretty much at the end of the year. And it was like, oh, it's so young, but like it was at the forefront of everything from content to work to thoughts to discussions during the year. And I guess the recruiters began to see like job applicants that use ChatGPT in order to write their thing and present themselves well. Sometimes to risk of like sounding generic, as we now know that ChatGPT and AI writing can be. We also noticed like students doing that for their essays and things like that. And there is a pretty big shift in terms of like the use of AI, but also the thoughts of AI. At first, it was like the you know, we were scared that AI was going to take jobs. And sometimes we can see that it's pretty difficult to automate everything in terms of jobs. And then, yeah, people will learn to work with it instead of fear it. But sometimes they also like used it even when it was forbidden in their, I guess, daily work life. So there is a problem of like regulation in terms of AI in the workplace and in the recruitment process. And then there are a lot of people that actually returned into office this year after gradually like lessening the levels of like working from home since the end of 2021. And we don't notice a big wave of quitting like we did in 2022, but we notice that people stay and do the bare minimum or are not happy. And, researchers name that the Great Resignation. No, it's like the end of a Great Resignation. It's like Great Resignation was, I guess, like the leaving of jobs to go to another thing. Okay, I'm getting this mixed up. Like it's not, they don't have the same names in French. The Great Resignation, but actually suddenly quitting in order to do another job. Like we don't have a means to do that as much as we did at the end of COVID. And in France, I even know like people that used to do freelancing or like marketing in like advertisement agency. They went and opened the bakery, and sometimes some of them returned to freelancing and closed their bakery or coffee shops and things like that. And so there's a real trend about like not being happy in the way things were before, but I think not knowing how to actually maintain a balance of having your dream job. And so I wonder, like, what do you guys think about like just that? It's already like quite a bit, but what do you guys think about the work trends of this year and what they say about society?
Well, so the pendulum swing from the Great Resignation, like of COVID and like just post-COVID, to like the quiet quitting trends and stuff 2023, like where basically you're like, oh, I don't like this job and I'm like checking out and doing the bare minimum, but I can't find another job because the job market is not as, it's tighter now. There aren't as many job openings. Um, which there still have been, there's throughout the year, there's been an increase in jobs. Like there have been new jobs. Like the economy was never in a recession or anything. Like but yeah, there's just not as much opportunity to leave and stuff. And that shows like that pendulum swing just shows like the nature of like just ego-based society, basically. Like there's a boom and a bust and stuff. And like, you know, during the pandemic, um, a shortage of workers. And then after the pandemic, you know, that went away. And it's just like, yeah, like there's always gonna be a fluctuation of conditions unless you are like doing this with God or with the divine, living your life purpose and like being indispensable, you know, in what you do, like meaning like really doing like what you're meant to do and doing it in the way that suits you, like being yourself, expressing yourself. Nobody else can do that, you know? So if you're not doing that, then you're subject to kind of like the fluctuations of the market, the job market. And sometimes again, it's like a boom and everyone's like, woo, like, you know, they're like flipping off their like old employer and being like, see ya, I can leave you now. Like I'm on COVID relief benefits or whatever, you know, and they're like freedom. And then like that goes away. Well, you have to pursue the real inner freedom that comes with like finding your purpose and, you know, whether that might come in the form of like having a job, a certain job, or it might be owning your own business or something, but that's what I felt from it. Yeah, I don't know. And then like once
Yeah,
the crisis comes, then people will be like, whoa, freedom again, you know. Yeah, sorry.
this is really interesting. Um, it's so funny because just I work at a like regular job Monday to Friday. I come in person, and it's so fun because even I've Sage and I have noticed a trend on Mondays and Fridays. It takes us literally like 15 to 20 minutes less time to get to work because people either don't work on those days or they're working from home. Like it's crazy. It's every Monday and Friday we get to like sleep in a little bit because we know there's not as much traffic.
Yeah,
Um, I feel like it's just yeah, it points to I feel like people are just bored and the key is to find your purpose, and I feel like COVID was meant to catalyze that and it did in some ways, but yeah, in another way it kind of created this way people now can more like work from home and just be more checked out and just stay at where they're at. Um,
mhm.
but yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I feel like yeah, I don't know. I just feel like the core is finding your purpose.
Yeah. I also like there's a discrepancy and I know because like I think I'm feeling that in myself. I think there's a discrepancy between um the freedom that people are given and
Mm.
the discipline that is thought to be required in order to live your dreams. I think a lot of people think that the career of their dreams is like working less, and I think because like the motion of COVID-19 is now officially over, and the prices of life are coming back to normal or even higher and things like that, even though there is a recession, people are finding it super hard to do this stuff. But like I think it's just I guess that's it. I think it's just a false notion of what is actually their life purpose and how to attain it. And I think all of us are kind of working through that in our own way and at our own level. But the return to reality can be pretty brutal for a lot of people. I don't really know that because I haven't had like work from home benefits in like 2 years, but I think I know, I guess I understand how it can be like difficult for people, and obviously like that you can feel like checked out if you don't like your job, you know. But it seems like we still have a long way to go in order to like find what is actually a life purpose. It seems like COVID, I guess it's a blessing in disguise, I guess, for us as unionists because we know where the truth is and how life purpose works. There is something about COVID-19 that felt a little bit like the twin flame journey. It was almost like an awakening, and it's like here a taste of like harmonious union in this place for you to see that it's possible to have this, and then you realize that you actually have to produce that vibration for yourself without the help of external resources. And you work that your way through that, and it's uncomfortable, and it feels disappointing, and it feels like falling flat on your face sometimes for some people, but maybe it also awakened in them a desire to find more. And maybe that's where like people come in and say like I think a lot of people come in order to like teach people how to sell, how to sell and open their business or side hustle. And then there are the spiritual people like us that come in order to say like yes, it's about selling, but it's also about feeling good, going to the lowest hanging fruit, like really learning how to do this in a really like healthy way, I guess. And I think that's the most interesting thing about it. But I do think there's this discrepancy yet to be healed between like what's actually required in order to do your life purpose and what's life requiring of you and the difference with your real job. Like it doesn't seem like much, like it's not that different. You need to have hours and discipline. It's just that long term, like it brings you way more joy and freedom.
Yeah. And like, if people really liked working from home and like really dislike working at the office, it just calls into question like, well, like, do you dislike your coworkers or your relationship with your coworkers? Do you dislike your company's values? Do you dislike what you're doing? Are you doing what you're doing for the wrong reasons? You know, or do you have a block there, like where you want to like distance yourself from it and like do it from home? Although there's like no problem with doing something from home. You can still have connections with people over the internet. I guess, yeah, there is something about face to face, like in person, that is different, you know? But like, yeah, I feel like it people are shown like rather than working from home being ideal, I think for a lot of people, what it just shows them is they wanted to distance themselves from their company, from their workplace. And the more distance between them and their workplace they could create, the happier they would feel, which means at the core, there's something amiss there, like there's something not good there. And then the workplace felt that, and then out of a desire for like control, I feel like mostly like called a lot of people back into the office, like, no, you've got to be with us so we can monitor you and oversee you. That's the number one thing that I don't understand. Because correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't it like better for company productivity for people to work at home, like overall in most cases, or no? Did that not turn out to be true?
Yes, but like at the former company where I am, my understanding between the regulations of working less and less from home was that working from home is actually costly in some ways to a company. I don't
Oh,
know
it is. In
why.
what way?
Costly. It's like it costs too much sometimes to have
Oh,
too many people working from home or like too often. I don't know why exactly. But I was in a company that was really about like making savings everywhere we could. So I don't know.
oh, that's so weird though, because like
Yeah.
you've got to rent office space, like you've got to often like it may be in a city, like they charge you way too much, and you got to air condition the building or heat it unless you're in Europe, then you don't air condition anything. I'm just kidding. I just don't understand that. You need air conditioning. No, but like you've got to maintain the building, like you got to
Yeah.
clean the bathroom. I just don't get it. But it seems my only understanding of it was just a desire for
Well,
control, close supervision.
yeah, there's that too. I think there's a desire for control and more monitoring what people are doing, really like checking that they're not like checked out. Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty much.
But then you're just fighting your employees. You're basically just fighting them instead
Yeah,
of
yeah, there was a real when I ended my contract there was a real fighting energy for
yeah.
sure. For sure. Like, yeah, I think people don't understand that it's not through control that you can have employees that are more present and enjoying their job. But at the same time, like, they don't know any better in order to like really have the the results that they need to have every month. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, there's that stuff. There is
Okay.
also like there is also something that is a little bit less joyful for employees is that there are a lot of companies where like employee benefits have been like reduced, or people feel like they have been reduced. And there is also, I guess this year there were a lot of strikes over the world, in the US, in France, South Africa, and other countries, on employee rights and being paid well, like writers and editors strike, or
Mhm.
train employee strikes, like railroad employee strikes, things like that in the UK as well. So yeah, I don't know what does that indicate? Like so many strikes, like it's so unusual.
Um, I guess it well, I think partly too, it's employees like pushing back against employers feeling like they can like give less to their employees, right? Because if it's a tighter job market, like employers are like, we don't need to work too hard to attract and keep people because there's nowhere else they could go, or there's less mobility. So we just don't have to provide as much. And then employees can push back against that with their unions and be like, we're gonna strike and make you come to a new agreement, So there's that. um there's the question of like, well, inflation was really big this year, and so people's benefits and wages may not be keeping up with inflation. So yeah, that's something. So um you could be like, you could be asking like, are workers wages keeping up with the value that they're being asked to provide,
Mhm.
or are workers asking for more wages than like what they're asking for more money, but without providing more value. But like a lot of companies I've heard have been moving toward asking their employees to provide more value anyway. Like instead of hiring more people, it's called quiet hiring. And you kind of like assign more duties to people instead of hiring more people. And so I feel like it makes sense then, but I know.
Yeah.
I don't
My
know.
former job had that too. When I was like on the way to leaving, like it was a quiet hiring, the slave coast. But there was also something about like um not valuing the employees rightly in that company as well. So yeah, it can be so many different things. It can be several things at the same time too. But I do remember like a few years ago, Jeff and Shaleia saying that there's no easy job today, and I'm sure like some parents say that all the time. I know mine do. But like there's like you can't go into a job market now and be paid to do nothing. Like you have to provide value no matter what. And so you really have to understand like what's the value that you're providing and are you actually providing enough value in the job that you do? Are you providing enough? Are you providing less? Are you providing more? And adapting to that. And really like I don't think there's a I know like in some markets like people are not valued enough, that's for sure. But I think there's general healing and consciousness about like really, really, really understanding um, the enormous power of like giving your 100% to something. Like just giving your 100%, 100% to your job, 100% to your care, 100% to your rest, 100% to your inner work, and not less. And I think a lot of people are not at 100. And I think if collectively everyone is at 100 in a company, like you actually can provide the value that is good without having to like slave away. You can also like, and your people are happy, so they're more inclined to pay you more afterwards. Things like that. That's just the game of life. And I think there's a huge lesson globally for a lot of people to learn there. I don't know if you guys feel that, but I think, I guess COVID provided for a few lessons, but I guess people are still learning this the hard way, I think. I'm not really blaming them because I have these types of lessons too to go through. But yeah.
Huh. And people learn that, well, life well lived is a life where you love, and it's about what you give. It's about loving, and loving yourself. It's not just about loving others. It's loving yourself, loving people, loving your life. And it's not just like, it's not being like, oh, what can I get, But yeah, but if you're not living your purpose, it can be challenging because you're like, well, I don't want to give this thing. I want to do this other thing, or I don't know what I want to do. And so then, yeah, you're just like, I need to go to a job to get paid and get my benefits and stuff just for that. But even if it's not like strictly your purpose, it is kind of still, because it's supporting you, it's leading you on the way, and you're still loving people, and yourself, and you're working for yourself. Shaleia always says that you're always working for yourself. So something people are learning. So, but until people do, there's going to be those fluctuations and those battles and that acrimony, and the employers and employees and and everything. So, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Isaiah, did you want to add something before the end?
No, I don't think so. I think we covered it.
Yeah, well, curious to know what the trends are going to be for this year and if we're going to change, have better boundaries, learn our lessons, spiritual lessons as a whole. But until then, we have reached our hour. So the discussion for today is almost over. Thank you to everyone who watched us live or watched us on YouTube. If you enjoyed this format, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel so you can see more. And with that, we wish you a good day and see you next week. Bye-bye.